Your mother will still be dead tomorrow. My boss laughed. This team lunch is non-negotiable. The client will be there. You miss it, you might as well not come back Monday. I felt my body go numb as her words echoed through me. 5 years of dedication to this company, countless weekends sacrificed, endless nights working until my eyes burned, all dismissed in a single cruel sentence. My mother, the woman who raised me alone after my father abandoned us when I was 8, had died unexpectedly Tuesday morning. Her funeral was scheduled for noon Friday, exactly when this mandatory lunch was happening. Layla, you need to understand how business works, she continued, examining her manicured nails. Everyone has family emergencies. Adults handle them without disrupting professional commitments. My throat tightened as I tried to respond. This wasn't a minor family emergency. This was my mother, my only family, who'd worked double shifts at the hospital for 20 years to put me through college, who'd never missed a single school event despite her exhaustion, who'd postponed her own dreams repeatedly so I could chase mine. I'd requested the bereavement leave Wednesday morning, following company protocol exactly. Human Resources had already approved it. Then came the last-minute lunch announcement, Thursday afternoon. The hospitality group we've been courting for 18 months finally agreed to meet, my boss explained with exaggerated patience. We rearranged everything to accommodate their schedule. This is our shot at the biggest client this company has ever landed. I understand the importance, I said quietly, but my mother's funeral will happen whether you're there or not, she interrupted. Grief doesn't pay the bills, Layla. Remember when I gave you that chance when no one else would? This is how you repay loyalty? I looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time. Behind the power suit and calculated smile was something I'd never recognized before, a hollowness that no success could fill. I'll make my decision by morning, I said finally, turning to leave. There is no decision, she called after me. Noon tomorrow, the Amber Room. Wear something impressive. Before I continue with what happened next, I want to thank you for listening to my story. If you relate to what I've shared so far or have faced similar impossible choices between work and family, please like this video and subscribe to hear more stories of workplace redemption. Your comments below help others feel less alone in these struggles. Now, let me continue with how everything unfolded. My name is Layla Navarro. At 32, I'd become the silent backbone of our boutique event management firm. While flashier personalities took center stage with clients, I orchestrated every successful experience from behind the scenes. I transformed ordinary corporate functions into memorable moments that strengthened relationships and secured contracts. My colleagues called me the magician for my ability to anticipate problems before they materialized. What they didn't know was that this hypervigilance came from years of watching my mother navigate crisis after crisis with grace. Preparation prevents panic, she'd tell me, and when you can't prepare, you adapt. That Thursday night, I sat alone in my apartment, surrounded by old photo albums. Mom beaming at my graduation, Mom dancing awkwardly at my cousin's wedding, Mom in her nurse's uniform, exhaustion lining her face but pride in her eyes after receiving her 20-year service pin. She'd collapsed suddenly during her morning commute, an undetected heart condition that took her within minutes. No goodbye, no final words, just gone, leaving a void no career achievement could possibly fill. I called my closest friend, Zoe, who'd known my mother since our childhood. Your boss said what? She gasped when I explained my dilemma. That's beyond heartless. The thing is, I replied, my voice breaking, I'm the only one who truly knew her. If I'm not there to speak about who she really was, then go, Zoe said firmly. Jobs come and go. You only get one chance to honor your mother. But I've worked so hard to get where I am, I whispered. Everything Mom sacrificed for my education, my career, throwing it away feels like betraying her too. Layla, your mother would never want you to choose a job that dehumanizes you over saying goodbye to her. Never. After we hung up, I stared at my closet, where 2 outfits hung side by side, the black dress I'd purchased for the funeral and the navy business suit expected for the lunch. I barely slept. By morning, I knew what I had to do. The funeral home was quiet, sunlight streaming through stained glass windows. My mother looked peaceful in her favorite blue dress, hands folded over the handmade quilt her grandmother had created. The small chapel held only 30 people, colleagues from the hospital, neighbors who'd watched me grow up, a few distant relatives. As I approached the podium to deliver her eulogy, I noticed the time, 11:40. The lunch would begin in 20 minutes across town. My mother used to say that how we treat people reveals everything about who we are. I began, my voice steady despite my trembling hands. She believed that moments of celebration and grief were sacred spaces where our true character emerges. I shared stories of her kindness, her determination, her ability to find joy despite hardship, how she taught me that success without compassion was failure disguised as achievement. As I spoke, something crystallized within me, a clarity I'd been lacking for years. At 12:15, as they lowered my mother's casket, I made a decision that would change everything. I kissed my fingers, placed them on the polished wood, and whispered, "I'll make you proud, Mom." Starting today, instead of going home after the service, I directed my car downtown, parked in the restaurant's lot, checked my reflection, tear-streaked but composed, still wearing my funeral clothes. From my tote bag, I removed a small wooden box my mother had kept on her nightstand. Inside were her most treasured possessions, not valuable in money, but priceless in meaning. I entered the Amber Room at 1:05 p.m. during the main course. Conversation halted abruptly. 8 colleagues, my boss, and 3 representatives from the hospitality group turned to stare as I approached the table. My boss's smile froze, her eyes widening with unmistakable fury. "Layla," she managed through clenched teeth. "What an unexpected surprise. We were just discussing the Winterland concept." The clients looked confused, glancing between us. One woman, clearly the decision-maker, by how the others deferred to her, studied me with particular interest. "I apologize for my tardiness," I said, voice clear and carrying across the hushed restaurant. "My mother's funeral concluded just 30 minutes ago." The client's eyebrows shot up, her gaze shifting to my boss, who laughed nervously. "Layla has such a unique sense of humor," she said, always keeping us on our toes with her dramatic entrances. I placed my mother's box on the white tablecloth, its weathered wood, stark against the gleaming silverware and crystal glasses. "I'm not here to join the lunch," I said. "I'm here because what I learned today at my mother's funeral cannot wait until Monday." My boss's face drained of color as I opened the box. I carefully removed the first item from my mother's box, a simple hospital wristband. This belonged to Jenny Mitchell. 3 years ago, I transformed a dying woman's last wish into reality, I said, my voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside me. Our company was hired for a standard anniversary celebration. When I learned the wife had terminal cancer, I recreated their honeymoon in Venice, complete with gondoliers singing in Italian, all within their hospital room. The CEO of that company still mentions it in speeches. I looked directly at my boss. "You received an industry award for that event, an event you visited for exactly 12 minutes. Her lips thinned to a tight line. "This is hardly the appropriate venue." "I think it's exactly the right venue," said the lead client, a woman in her 50s with piercing eyes. "Please continue, Layla." I pulled out a small glass vial of sand. "Beach wedding in Maine. The bride's grandmother couldn't travel due to advanced Parkinson's. I created satellite celebrations in 3 nursing homes across the country, synchronized to the main event. The gratitude letters mentioned how grandmother Elaine danced for the first time in years." My boss shifted uncomfortably. "Layla assisted with that event. I conceptualized and executed it entirely," I corrected quietly, "while you were on vacation in Belize." The client tilted her head, interest deepening. "Why are we discussing old projects?" my boss demanded, trying to reclaim control. I continued removing items, a handwritten thank you note, a miniature sculpture, a dried flower. Each represented an event where I'd gone beyond expectations, where I'd transformed ordinary gatherings into profound human connections, work that had built our company's reputation while my contributions remained invisible. "My mother worked her entire life behind the scenes," I explained, "saving lives as a nurse while doctors received accolades. She taught me that true value comes from the impact you make, not the credit you receive." I turned to address the clients directly. "The Winterland concept you were just discussing? The ice sculptures that change throughout the evening to tell your company's evolution? The temperature-sensitive invitations that reveal your new initiative only when warmed in guests' hands? Those weren't created in a team brainstorming session, as you were told." My boss's face flushed deep red. This is completely unprofessional. They came from my proposal 3 months ago, I continued. A proposal that was initially rejected as too ambitious until suddenly it wasn't, once my name was removed. The lead client, Vivian, according to her name card, leaned forward. Are you saying you created the concepts we've been presented today? Yes. Along with most of our signature experiences over the past 5 years, my boss laughed, but the sound held panic. Layla is understandably emotional today. Grief makes people say strange things. Grief brings clarity, I corrected. My mother died believing I was valued for my creativity. Today, I learned I'm valued only for my compliance. I reached the bottom of the box and removed a worn business card. Not glossy and embossed like our company's, but simple cream cardstock. It belonged to Robert Hayes, an industry veteran who'd tried to recruit me last year. Yesterday, I believed I had no options. I said, today, I remembered, I always do. The silence that followed felt electric. My boss's carefully constructed facade was crumbling, her eyes darting between me and the clients. If you'll excuse me, I said, gathering my mother's mementos back into the box. I've said what I needed to say. As I turned to leave, Vivian stood. Actually, I have questions, if you don't mind staying. What followed was the most honest professional conversation I'd ever experienced. For 40 minutes, I discussed my philosophy on creating meaningful experiences while my boss sat in stunned silence. Her attempts to interject were politely but firmly deflected by the clients. When I finally left the restaurant, I felt oddly weightless. I hadn't intended to quit so publicly, or at all, really, but standing in that room, I'd channeled my mother's courage. The woman who'd faced every hardship with unwavering dignity wouldn't have wanted me to shrink myself any longer. Back home, exhausted from the emotional whirlwind of the day, I barely registered my phone's persistent chiming. Texts, calls, voicemails piling up. I silenced it and fell into a dreamless sleep, still wearing my funeral dress. I woke at dawn to someone pounding on my apartment door. Layla, open up. It was Nina from accounting, the only colleague I considered a friend. I opened the door to find her bouncing with nervous energy, still in yesterday's clothes. You missed everything, she blurted, rushing past me. After you left, it was chaos. Total chaos. What happened? I asked, rubbing sleep from my eyes. Nina paced my small living room. The clients asked to see portfolios of previous events, specifically the ones you mentioned. When Karen couldn't produce them fast enough, they requested to speak privately with other team members. Karen was my boss, the woman who denied my bereavement leave. They interviewed each of us separately, Nina continued, asked point blank who actually created various concepts. Most people tried to be vague, but after Brett confirmed your story about the hospital room transformation, others started talking too. I sank onto my couch, unsure how to feel, and Karen, completely unraveled, started claiming you were stealing her ideas, not the other way around. Nina shook her head. But then Vivian mentioned they'd been researching our company for weeks before this meeting, had spoken with previous clients who specifically praised the quiet woman with brilliant ideas. Apparently that's how people describe you. I almost smiled despite everything. My mother had once been described the same way by a doctor who relied on her. By dinner, the clients had decided to work exclusively with you, whether through our company or independently. They gave Karen an ultimatum: either give you proper credit and creative control of their account, or lose the contract entirely. My phone began ringing again. Karen's name flashed on the screen for perhaps the 20th time since yesterday. She's been calling everyone, trying to damage control, Nina explained. But something else happened after you left that you don't know about. What? Remember Tomas from the Bayfront Hotel launch? He was having lunch in another section of the restaurant, recognized you from our previous work with them. After overhearing everything, he called their event director. The Bayfront account was one of our largest, a prestigious hotel chain that had been threatening to take their business elsewhere for months due to what they called declining creativity. This morning, their director emailed the entire company, requesting to work directly with you on their upcoming rebrand. Nina's eyes were wide. Karen's position is suddenly very precarious. As if summoned by her name, a new text from Karen appeared. Need to speak immediately. Board meeting emergency session this afternoon. Your attendance required. Executive decision pending. What does that mean? I asked, showing Nina the message. She grimaced. The board rarely meets on weekends unless something major is happening, like a leadership change. They wouldn't fire her over this, I said, shocked by how quickly everything was unfolding. Maybe not just over this, Nina replied. There have been complaints about her management style for years. Client retention dropping, key staff leaving. Yesterday might have been the final straw. I set my phone down, overwhelmed. 24 hours ago, I'd been preparing to say goodbye to my mother. Now I was somehow at the center of a company upheaval I never intended to create. What are you going to do? Nina asked. I don't know, I admitted. I didn't plan any of this. I just couldn't stand being talked to that way anymore, especially not on the day of Mom's funeral. Nina squeezed my hand. Whatever you decide, several of us will follow you. We've watched Karen take advantage of you for years. As Nina left, promising to update me about the emergency board meeting, I returned to my mother's bedroom, now half-packed with items for donation. On her nightstand sat the framed quote she'd kept since nursing school. Your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. I picked up my phone, scrolled past Karen's increasingly desperate messages, and called the number on the worn business card I'd shown at lunch. Robert, it's Layla Navarro. I think it's time we had that conversation about my future. What I didn't realize then was that my impulsive stand at that restaurant would trigger a chain of events beyond anything I could have imagined. Revelations that would shake our industry, opportunities I'd never dared dream of, and an unexpected chance to redefine success on my own terms. But first, I had to survive the emergency board meeting, where Karen was undoubtedly planning her counterattack. And knowing her, she wouldn't go down without a vicious fight. 3 hours later, I stood outside the glass doors of our company's boardroom. Through the frosted panel, I could see silhouettes, 7 board members seated around the conference table, plus Karen's distinctive profile gesturing animatedly. Her voice carried through the door, though her exact words were muffled. Nina had texted updates throughout the morning. Apparently, Karen was painting me as unstable, claiming grief had pushed me to fabricate stories about creative ownership. She'd spent the morning gathering evidence of her contributions, hastily assembled presentations and meeting notes that supposedly proved her creative leadership. I smoothed down my simple black dress, the same one from Mom's funeral, though now paired with a structured blazer. Days ago, this meeting would have terrified me. Now, with nothing left to lose, I felt strangely calm. I knocked once and entered without waiting for permission. Every head turned. Karen stopped mid-sentence, her presentation remote clutched in a white-knuckled grip. On the projection screen behind her was a photo of me, taken at a company retreat last year, with bullet points beside it. Emotional instability, history of exaggerating contributions, unprofessional conduct with clients. Ah, Layla, said Edmund, the board chairman, a man in his 60s who'd founded the company before bringing in investors. Thank you for joining us. Perfect timing. Karen was just sharing her perspective on yesterday's incident. Karen recovered quickly, her practiced smile sliding back into place. Yes, I was explaining how grief can sometimes affect judgment. We all sympathize with Layla's loss, of course. That's very generous of you, I replied, taking the empty seat at the far end of the table, especially considering you canceled my bereavement leave for a lunch. An uncomfortable murmur rippled through the room. Several board members exchanged glances. That's not exactly, Karen began. My mother died on Tuesday, I continued evenly. Karen approved my bereavement leave Wednesday morning. Thursday afternoon, she revoked it when the client meeting was scheduled, telling me, and I quote, "Your mother will still be dead tomorrow." I removed my phone, tapped the screen, and placed it on the table. Karen's voice filled the room. Your mother will still be dead tomorrow. This team lunch is non-negotiable. The client will be there. You miss it, you might as well not come back Monday. In the silence that followed, Karen's expression transformed from confident to cornered. You recorded me? She hissed. No, I replied. I recorded myself practicing what I would say at Mom's eulogy. My phone was still recording when you entered my office. Edmund cleared his throat. Karen, is that your voice on the recording? It's taken completely out of context, she insisted. Layla has been increasingly difficult to manage, always demanding credit, undermining team cohesion. That's not what your other employees say. interrupted Diane, the newest board member. I spent this morning speaking with your department. 12 people independently confirmed that Layla has been the creative force behind your most successful campaigns. Karen's smile became brittle. Well, of course she contributed. We all did. That's how teams work. Actually, I said, opening my bag, I think it's time we clarified what contribution means. I removed a slim black notebook and slid it toward Edmund. This contains dated sketches and notes for every major concept our department has produced in the last 5 years, including the Winterland proposal presented yesterday. The board chair flipped through pages of detailed illustrations, concept maps, and event timelines, all in my handwriting, all dated weeks or months before their implementation. I also have copies of emails where I submitted these ideas, I continued, and the revised versions Karen returned, with her name added as creator. Karen stood abruptly. This is absurd. Edmund, you know me. I built this department from nothing. Are you really going to take her word over mine? Someone who disrupted a critical client meeting to make everything about herself. That meeting you're referring to, said a new voice from the doorway, resulted in our biggest contract in company history. We all turned to see Vivian standing there, the lead client from yesterday's lunch. I apologize for interrupting, she said, stepping inside. But your receptionist mentioned this emergency meeting, and I thought my perspective might be valuable. Karen's face cycled through shock, confusion, and forced pleasantry. Vivian, what a surprise. We didn't expect you today. Clearly, Vivian replied dryly. I came to finalize details with Layla for our partnership. After yesterday's revelations, my team spent the evening revising our contract to specify that Layla must lead our account personally. She placed a thick folder on the table. This represents a 3-year commitment worth $7 million, about triple what we originally discussed. But it's contingent on Layla's direct involvement and proper attribution of her work moving forward. The board members' expressions shifted instantly, financial interest overriding any remaining doubts. Furthermore, Vivian continued, the Bayfront Hotel Group contacted me this morning, asking about my experience working with Layla. Apparently, they're also insisting on her leadership for their upcoming projects. Edmund turned to me, suddenly seeing me with new eyes. You've certainly been busy, Layla. I've been exactly who I've always been, I replied. The difference is that now others can see it too. Karen laughed sharply. This is ridiculous. She creates a dramatic scene at our client lunch, and you're rewarding her? What kind of precedent does that set? Perhaps the precedent that we value honesty and talent, replied Diane. For an hour, the discussion continued, Karen growing increasingly desperate as board members reviewed my evidence. They asked detailed questions about specific projects, timelines, and client relationships. With each answer, Karen's position weakened. Finally, Edmund called for a brief recess. As board members filed out for a private discussion, Karen cornered me near the water cooler. You think you've won, she whispered furiously, but you have no idea what it takes to manage client relationships, department budgets, strategic planning. You're a glorified idea generator. Without me, you'll collapse under the pressure. I filled a paper cup with water, my hand steady. Maybe you're right, but I'd rather fail honestly than succeed by exploiting others. So self-righteous, she sneered. Just like your precious mother. I imagine. Something in me went very still. What do you know about my mother? A calculating look crossed Karen's face. More than you think. Martina Navarro, Providence Hospital, night shift supervisor for 20 years. Right? Always putting others first? Never advancing her own career? What an inspiration. The contempt in her voice made my skin crawl. How do you know those details? Because, Karen said, leaning closer, 6 years ago, your mother refused me a job. I had just moved to the city, needed hospital work desperately. She said I lacked the compassion necessary for patient care. Me, with a nursing degree and 3 years' experience. I stared at her, pieces clicking into place. You knew who I was when you hired me. Of course I did. Navarro isn't exactly common. When I saw your resume, daughter of the woman who derailed my medical career, I couldn't believe my luck. Her smile was venomous. I needed someone with your creativity, keeping you undervalued and invisible while building my reputation on your ideas. That was just a bonus. The revelation hit me like physical pain. For 5 years, I'd worked for a woman who had secretly resented me and my mother from the beginning. Before I could respond, The board members returned. Their somber expressions told me everything. After careful consideration, Edmund announced, the board has decided on immediate leadership changes. Karen, you're being removed as department head, effective immediately. Layla will assume the position on a provisional basis while we evaluate permanent restructuring options. Karen's face drained of color. You can't be serious. After everything I've built. Everything Layla built, corrected Diane. With proper leadership training, we believe she can deliver even more value to the company and our clients. This isn't over, Karen said, gathering her things. I'll appeal to shareholders. That would be unwise, Edmund replied coldly. There will be a full investigation into all past client work and attribution. If we find further evidence of misrepresentation, there could be legal consequences. After Karen stormed out, Vivian approached with extended hand. Congratulations. I look forward to seeing what you create when you're fully empowered. As everyone dispersed, I remained alone in the boardroom, emotions swirling. My phone chimed with a text from Robert, the industry veteran I'd called earlier. Just heard the news. My offer still stands if corporate politics becomes too much. Either way, I'm proud of you. Your mother would be too. 3 months later, I stood on a stage accepting an industry award for the Winterland experience, my name properly credited as creative director. In the audience sat my team, including Nina and 3 others who'd been quietly suffering under Karen's leadership. On the podium beside me was a small photo of my mother. This award honors innovation, I said to the crowd. But tonight, I want to recognize something more fundamental: integrity. My mother taught me that how we succeed matters as much as success itself. Karen had ultimately resigned rather than face the investigation, taking a position at a smaller firm in another state. I'd heard she was already clashing with their creative team. As for me, I'd declined Robert's recruitment offer, at least temporarily. Every week brought new challenges as I learned to lead rather than simply create. But each difficulty felt meaningful in a way that burnout never had. After the ceremony, Zoe hugged me tightly. Your mom would be bursting with pride. I think she orchestrated the whole thing, I replied, only half joking. Her final gift was showing me what I'm truly worth. That night, I added my award to Mom's wooden box, the once private collection of meaningful moments now proudly displayed on my office shelf. Beside it sat a framed needlepoint she'd made years ago. Its message had guided her life and now guided mine. Never allow someone to take advantage of your kindness. It's not weakness to be generous, but it's wisdom to recognize when others mistake generosity for surrender. My story isn't about revenge, though it might seem that way. It's about reclaiming your power when others try to diminish your light. It's about honoring those who taught us our worth, even when doing so requires uncomfortable courage. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe. Share your own experiences in the comments, the moments when you stood up for yourself or wish you had. Our collective stories remind us that we're never as alone in these struggles as we might feel. And sometimes, the most powerful thing we can do is simply to show up authentically, even when, especially when, someone tells us we shouldn't. Thank you for listening to my journey. May you find the courage to honor what truly matters in your own life, regardless of who tells you it's negotiable.